Here I am right there.
You found yourself.
I was looking because I couldn't see where I was. So anyway, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out with us this evening. Welcome to the National Atomic Testing Museum. My name is David McClendon. I'm of the Green Samaritan Group. All right. So tonight we're having a live panel discussion we're having a live discussion with various community leaders discussing food insecurities. But before, I couldn't get it right, I was in the wrong place. But before we start, today's a bittersweet day. Today, the Queen of England passed away. A person who has been queen for over 7 years and has seen many presidents come and go. She's been a steady pillar on the global stage. So her passing is a little sad. But today is also Star Trek Day. So today, 56 years ago, CBS aired the very first pilot of Star Trek, which they had no idea that it would turn into the epic sci-fi franchise that it is today. I believe it is the largest sci-fi franchise ever. So, with acknowledging Star Trek Day, I want to say that in so many ways, Star Trek gave us the blueprint for our future. It is now up to us, it is our responsibility to follow that blueprint, and to create that future. Star Trek was dubbed the wagon train of the stars, and it offered us hope for humanity. Star Trek tackled social issues and forced us to accept people as people. This epic series boldly fought for diversity and against racism. It had iconic characters like George Takei, who played Lieutenant Sulu, and Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura. Nichelle Nichols recently passed and left us with an incredible legacy. She was a singer, she was a dancer, and she would preferred to have been performing on Broadway versus a TV studio. However, as fate would have it, as she was considered leaving the show, Ms. Nichols was asked by Dr. King. He pleaded with her to stay on the show and to be a representation of Black America. So by doing that, she made people from all ages, generations, ethnic backgrounds fall in love with Star Trek, including myself. As you guys see, I'm wearing my uniform. But one of Nichelle Nichols' most incredible legacies is the fact that it wasn't her character as Lieutenant Uhura, but the fact that she was a NASA recruiter. She almost single-handedly made NASA a diverse program. She recruited Black people, Spanish people, Asian people, Jewish people, men, women, people from different backgrounds, people that the military purposely excluded, she brought in. And it is, I am profoundly grateful for what she's done. I learned that one of my astronaut heroes, Dr. Mae Jameson, joined NASA because of Nichelle Nichols. So I feel that a little connection. So with that, I would like to have a moment of silence for Nichelle Nichols. If you want to just bow our heads for a moment. Thank you. So I want you guys to listen to these words and let them sit in your thoughts. Hunger isn't a privilege. food shouldn't be either. That's our theme for this evening's discussion. In Clark County, it's reported that 1 in 6 families are currently facing food insecurities. We know that number is inaccurate. It is a guesstimate on their part. It doesn't account for homelessness. It doesn't account for people living in their cars. It doesn't account for the working poor. It doesn't account for the children who moved from one location and didn't register into their current school or didn't offer a forwarding address. So, in actuality, the number could be 1 in 4 families, maybe even 1 in 3 families face food insecurities. Tonight, we're going to have a panel discussion with with people from varying communities, led by our moderator, the Purple Purpose Princess, Cheyenne Kyle, of the Obodo Collective. Cheyenne will moderate this discussion as we try to discuss the issue and find practical solutions. With that, please, Ms. Kyle, tell them about yourself and then introduce your panel.
Awesome. Well, for starters, I am super excited to see the guests in the room, and I'm sure the ones that are joining us on live. We'd like to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us to be here for this discussion. And if you guys will bear with me for just a little bit, I said a little bit before we started that emotions don't really contain in my body, and I feel overwhelmingly grateful to be here. So I'd like to do something with us all, including our viewers at home. And I want to really focus on that gratitude for just a second. So if I could have everyone here and at home close your eyes for me for just a second. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Let that air fill inside of your belly. Nice, full. Breathe out through your mouth. Thank you so much. You can open your eyes. I always like to start my mornings like that because the world can get kind of hectic. We live stressful lives. And if you ever need a reason to be grateful, that was it for you right there. That's our starting point. That's our baseline. So thank you guys so much for entertaining me. Like David mentioned, I am Cheyenne Kyle. I am a chef. I am a master gardener. I am a food justice activist. And I am the food programs coordinator for the Obodo Collective. We are super excited to be here. I've been doing this work in this community. I've started doing activism when I was 11 years old. I told my mom once, you can go out and help people and they can't stop you, because I was that kid. I was the kind of annoying, didn't have much friends kind of kid. And being able to be of service to people in my community was super important to me from a very young age. So I'm super grateful to be here and to be in that position once again with these lovely panelists, who I will pass it over to. Ms. Tameka Henry, please introduce yourself, your organization, your position, what brings you here today.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tameka Henry. I'm the executive director for the Obodo Collective. I was invited here today by my good friend, David. Thank him so much for having us in the Green Samaritan group. I'm here today because this is a very important conversation that needs to happen with not only our panelists, but all of you that are here, and hopefully it spreads throughout our communities and through our states to, really push policies that help create more food security for our communities.
Thank you. Next up we have Mario.
Hi, yes, my name is Mario Gutierrez. I'm an artist, father, master gardener as well. I've been very involved with, especially since the pandemic and shutdowns, is bringing more multifunctional green spaces to the community, more edible resources, and I'm a big fan of Cheyenne and Tameka and the Obodo Collective and Victoria, and I just met Jacob. So like Tameka was saying, this is a very important conversation that we'll be having, especially as it's just intensity of the world just keeps amplifying. I think that we need to focus on our communities, especially our communities that are underserved and underrepresented, and make sure that we take care of each other. So thank you for the opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Mario. Next up, we have Victoria.
Hello, I'm Victoria Flores. I am the founder of Solidarity Fridge. We're a community pantry and community garden in East Las Vegas. We focus on community empowerment, food justice, and nourishing and providing resources to our underserved community. We've pretty much converted our residents into a community green space for our community to gather and create and learn and share and to build. So I am grateful to be here amongst our community builders and with you all, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Jacob.
Hello, my name is Jacob Ginn. I have lived in Las Vegas for pretty much my entire life, and I'm a recent graduate at UNLV with a bachelor's in public health. When I was there, I interned with company Green Our Planet. I'm working there now as their hydroponics coordinator. One of their departments is hydroponics, where they're able to bring hydroponics programs to schools across the country and use them as practical laboratories to teach children about conservation, nutrition, and about actually what a plant is and how it can grow and how they could possibly grow it, and take that information and possibly build a better world in the future, especially with the expanding markets in STEM research, in STEM jobs. Yeah, it seems like a very important and crucial thing for them to get into. And if going along with what the topic is today on food insecurities, being able to practically bring that into their lives and address that in their communities, with their families and their homes, and possibly across the nation and across the world. And I'm very happy to be a part of it and to have been invited by David there. And thank you all for coming, and very happy to get started.
Awesome. Now that we got all of our introductions out of the way, we can just jump into these questions. I'm excited. Can you guys tell? So one of the things about food insecurity that I always thought was really interesting, I know the federal definition, right? Which the USDA defines as the household level economic and social condition of limited, uncertain access to adequate food, right? That never correlated. You know, I've been doing this work for quite some time. That does not register. Food insecurity became real to me when I paid my car note and I, got an oil change and I, got my school books and had absolutely zero money left over for food. That is one of the ways that this kind of intersects with our lives. So I'm very interested to our panelists. How do you define food insecurity, and what does that look like for you guys? We can start off with Ms. Tameka.
Thank you, Cheyenne.
You were making eyes at me, so I was like, we'll start over there.
You know how it is. Food insecurity, like you said, lack of access to quality, safe food within your community. And what it looks like, I've had to use food pantries before. That's what it looks like. It looks like when you're volunteering in schools, something that I do when you see kids putting food in their pockets to take home to their younger siblings. That's what food insecurity looks like. It looks like when you're volunteering at a center for teenagers and they're raiding the cabinets for food. That's what food insecurity looks like within my community and the communities that I work in. So yes, that's a federal definition, but to put stories with it, that's what food insecurity looks like.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why this question was important for me to ask is because sometimes those definitions and the terminology create barriers. When you hear a definition, it's very easy in your brain to think of, oh, well, that seems like an easy fix. Why don't we just do that? But like Tameka said, when you have stories that go along with it, when you understand like the circumstances that people are dealing with, it allows you to find a little bit more compassion. It allows you to kind of try to see the situation from that other person's perspective and understand that this is not something, a lot of people feel shamed for their situation, though there are things that are outside of their control and outside of their power that are directly influencing this. So I'd like to continue going down my panel. Mario, what are your thoughts? How do you define food insecurity, and what does that look like to you?
Yeah, just to bounce off on the beginning of what David was saying is, I read the same stat. 1 in 6, families are food insecure, and on the same stat says 1 in 4 children are food insecure. So, as myself, as a child, and also as well as youth, college, but I think when you're a college student, it's just what you're doing, and you're kind of so busy, it doesn't really seem as daunting. But as a child, my father was from Mexico, and we lived there for a few years, and we moved back to the States. And shortly after we moved back, he passed away. And my mother, who was at home mom, now had 5 children to take care of. And I feel that for myself, we had access to food, but it was the energetic and the nutrition value to the food. So our food was a lot of packaged, processed foods, fast foods. My mother, I think, was using food as a coping mechanism for the trauma that we had felt, and just living on there. My water was Coca-Cola, So I think for me that would be an example. I mean, I frequent the parks a lot. I have children myself, and last couple days there was a child who was eating ramen noodles uncooked, just eating that because that was the food that they had, and I can recognize that this child was living in a car somewhere, and this is very, it's a lot of this happening currently in Las Vegas and Southern Nevada and United States and globally. So, I think that would be, instead of fruit, you have what you have, which is something packaged, and you're just filling yourself with empty calories. I think 60% of the food that we eat in the United States has 0 nutritional value. So I think that's something that's very a frightening statistic for myself when I learned that.
Yeah, definitely. That is definitely something to put in the pocket and take with you, you know what I mean? I think also a lot of times we see people plaster in classrooms and in libraries, these are the foods that you should eat. This is how you are healthy. This is what, you know what I mean? But realistically speaking, if they don't have access to this, then all you're doing is shaming people for the illusion of a choice that they don't have, Access is a huge aspect, as well as affordability when we talk about food insecurity. Passing it down over to Victoria, how do you define it? What does it look like to you?
So when I think of food insecurity, I think of any time a person cannot afford or doesn't know where their next meal is going to come from. Like I hear you guys talk a lot about children. At one point in the Valley, children sometimes weren't getting any food at home besides the times they were going to school. Another thing I think about is single mothers. They're in the workforce. They have to worry about high rent prices, daycare expenses that take a huge percentage of their income, and then still try to make ends meet. I think about our elders who, and not even just our elders, but also people on disability who have to ration food or medicine because they're on fixed income. So it affects a wide range, age, sex, race, it doesn't matter, but it also disproportionately affects Black and brown folks in our communities.
Thank you so much for that. I'm gonna We're going to touch on that a little bit later, definitely. Jacob, what are your thoughts? How do you feel about it? How do you define food insecurity, and what does that look like?
Going off of what you said, yes, I did look it up, and I did see that that federal definition of food insecurities, and I felt like my eyes were glazing over.
Right.
I wasn't able to fully understand exactly what that meant with all the jargon, and I like to think of it as that is the sanitized version. That is the sort of euphemism. They are using all these big words and not showing exactly the cost of it, which is really the more human version, which is, students in their seats, not paying attention because they're too busy thinking about what they're going to eat. They have an empty stomach. There are these communities who have to take long bus rides or try and dodge traffic to try and get to a supermarket that's on the other side of town because they don't have anything near them. And then there are these people who possibly commit crimes or are in a vulnerable position because they haven't had those options. And what you said as well about the options and choice with like the poster in the library, not everyone has those options, and they acknowledge that, and they know that, and they think that there's something wrong, and that they have no option, no place to go. Without those options and that reality present to them, they don't know where to go, and so they turn to what I would like to refer to it to summarize food insecurity in its most fewest and most grotesque of words: injustice producing desolation, an emptiness, a loneliness. People think that they've been left behind and that no one cares about them.
Yeah, that was very powerful. Jacob got bars, y'all. Yeah, that was definitely, especially when we talk about vulnerable communities. I recently, we're always learning, we're always growing and educating ourselves. I actually recently found out that one of the #1 reasons why people who are recovering addicts relapse is because of food insecurity, because their basic needs are not being met. And so, this causes stress. Think about us in our personal situations. When you open up an empty fridge, especially if you got kids hollering that they're hungry, it adds some insurmountable amount of stress onto you as an individual, and you will fall back into those old habits very easily, especially if that's where you were getting your comfort or, just feeling like any sort of release. So that information, especially when we're talking about like vulnerable communities, kind of was very interesting, and I never correlated those two things together, so I'm happy to share that here with you guys today. Getting to pick your brain, I want to know, what are your personal experiences or your community's experiences with food insecurity? Now, for me personally, I was not born here. I know. How dare I, right? I am a Los Angeles transplant. I moved here, went to middle school and high school out here. And when I moved here, when I landed in Vegas, we lived in the area known as the historic West Side. Now, I had always been in love with food. I went to culinary school. Like, food is my jam. Emotional eater for sure, And one thing that was really disheartening to me, being a young woman who learned how to cook from her grandmothers, who learned how to sort and find ingredients by taste, by smell, like real old school, like how grandmas do. They smell the stuff, they look at it, they're kind of all of that stuff. To not be able to find produce that I would deem edible was very difficult. And that was it was when I first started to notice the discrepancies and the very intentional discrepancies. So I'd like to ask the panel, what are your personal experiences or experiences that you see your community go through dealing with food insecurity?
Anybody?
Oh yeah, we can go with whoever. Victoria, I see you. If you guys make eyes at me, I'm gonna pick on you.
Man, listen. When you do talk about the historic West Side, and that's where a lot of our work takes place, we know that there's a lack of grocery stores, those big chain stores in our communities, and we're tired of it.
Yeah.
you know, and we must do something about it. It's enough, we're over meeting about it. Like, it's really time to do something about it. There is a local market that's there in the historic West Side where, the hot food section is popping. Hot food section is popping, and not the most nutritious food, but I'm happy that he, over the past few years, has increased access to fruit and vegetables that is beautiful. It used to look a mess, just being honest. It used to look a mess. It used to only be potatoes and greens and a few onions, but now it's so colorful. Like, there's a variety of fruit and vegetables, and he's willing to purchase other items that typically doesn't come to this neighborhood, and it gives the community an opportunity to try different fruit that they've never tried before, different vegetables that they usually wouldn't. And I'm happy that he started doing that, because he is one of the only stores right there in the historic West Side who seems to care, because there's another store there that you walk in, the grocery store, it smells. You don't want to buy anything from here. There's flies around the produce. Some of the produce is wilted, and we deserve better than that. And so, and we also deserve to have more quality options in that area. And not just there. There are other areas throughout Southern Nevada that needs it too. But I know that that's a question that will come up later, but that's my take.
I do want to add really quickly, because I'm full of fun facts, you guys. I'm like Snapple. I do want to add really quickly, though, that just to kind of did you know that the reason why you eat certain things, like certain things are available to us who even do have access, right? The orange carrots, the broccoli that we eat, the russet potatoes or the Yukon. The only reason that we have, even us who may not be considered food insecure, the lack of diversity within our own diets is because it is way more financially beneficial to grow those things. So just putting it out there. So it may be worth it to go and shop at stores that you wouldn't normally go shop at. Shop at stores that are different ethnically than what you're used to, so that you can increase the nutritional diversity in what you're putting in your body, because I can promise you there's a plant for everything. There's legitimate a plant for everything, and it may just be kind of stepping outside of your comfort zone and not eating what you normally eat, because what you normally eat, you're eating only because it was more profitable for some other person. So just a little tidbit. Victoria, I know you had some thoughts on that one. We'll jump to you.
Yeah, so I went back to my childhood, and my abuela, my grandma, she's from Michoacan. And, I remember her waking us up at 5 a.m. to help her with tamales, to help with certain dishes that were made from scratch. However, when I was in elementary school, she had a stroke that kind of left her, paralyzed and bedridden. So that became like my exposure to 7-Eleven and going to the nearby store to get groceries. And like we can talk about like eating better, and our communities know what veggies are and fruits are, but if they're not accessible and affordable, then all of that doesn't mean anything. And like Tameka said, like we're worthy of not only healthy options and nutritious options, but cultural foods in our community. So again, that was like my exposure, as a child. And then even hearing later on in my life about my mom and my father, who married young, and they started their lives in the fields. So they worked in Los Campos, and hearing those stories of how people have to drink salt water, sugar water to stay awake and, you know, be moving, and themselves not being paid a decent wage to not be able to afford food, like, that sticks with me. So pantries and, you know, even WIC for our mothers who can't afford baby formula, all of that has been a personal experience for me. And then as far as what I see in my community, there's, for our undocumented folks, there's 45%. And again, like David said, those are just numbers that could be misreported. But 45% of our undocumented folks are food insecure. And their children, there's 2 out of 3 of them that are dealing with, that suffer with those issues. Latinos are 2.5 times more likely to experience food insecurity than their white counterparts. And then women, they're 35 times more likely to experience poverty as opposed to men. And, you know, it's just our economic and social statuses that affect and play a role in all of this.
That was very well said. And it reminds me, you know, a little bit of my childhood as well, because I'm Belizean. And so for those of you who do not know where Belize is, it's right underneath Mexico, right? So Afro-Latina, woo woo. And I definitely had those experiences of waking up super early in the morning to cook with your grandmother and not being able to find the ingredients that she was familiar with kind of caused a cultural disconnect. And again, it's just because someone somewhere deemed that what was important to us was not worthy, was not profitable, you know? So just things to take into consideration as we look at the food system as a whole. Me personally, and this is very important to know, I never blame the food. I could never blame the food. Food is awesome. Food makes me very happy. It does all the things for me, you know? So I never blame the food, and a lot of the issues that we have within our food system actually come from either the industrialization of our food system, or they come from the socioeconomic aspects of it that we have to, I mean, realistically, the changes that we're doing as community, awesome, but once we start getting into policy and collaborating on that front, that's when we can start seeing, I feel like, more nationwide progress. But I do want to take some time and ask my gents, how do you guys feel about it? What are your personal experiences, and or how has that affected your communities? And by the way, your community doesn't have to just be your neighborhood. It could be your family, it could be your school, it could be just where you at, where you be, you know what I mean? So I'm gonna open it up to my gentlemen.
Off on the what you were talking about the intersection of socioeconomic status and ethnicities and all that. There's also the issue of geography. Where I am in northern Las Vegas. I like to say that I can walk a block and I'll be in the middle of an open desert. And up there, I've definitely seen that there is a limitation. Even if there's not much food insecurity in the community in general, there is limitation where if you don't have a car, for instance, you can't get there. In essence, that is, yeah, if no one had a car and you had to walk, that is, and this is another question of food desert, where it's more than a 20-minute walk, it's more than a mile to the nearest supermarket. The closest food outlets we have there are a convenience store and a Pizza Hut, and that's all we have. And that's all maybe a lot of people may only have access to, as it's more convenient. And what I've seen up there, there were a few blocks of land that have recently been developed, and boy was I angry when I saw that they were developing housing communities and apartments instead of, at the very least, putting another commercial center in there to sort of dilute that a bit, or have a more mixed land use, for instance. So there's that geographical factor where kind of those on the fringes as well, and those in rural communities are kind of left behind. whereas people are moving more and more to cities or more and more to the center of cities. And reasonably speaking, for business, these fast food chains would, or not these fast food chains, these supermarket chains would go where the most people are. Yeah, they're just leaving everyone behind.
Yeah, that is also very true. And, you know, these fun facts are going to keep coming at you guys all night. So, did you know that the government actually defines 7-Eleven convenience stores as grocery stores?
Mm-hmm.
Ain't that something? You know? Crazy. So when we, as people who live in these communities or experience this in real time, right? When we're like, how can you keep building a 7-Eleven and a Rebel and an Arco and a Shell? No shade, don't come for me. How can you keep building these when there isn't a grocery store here? And it's because when they look at the map on the federal scale, on the governmental scale, it says, there's a grocery store right there. Little do they know, it's a 7-Eleven, you know? And your options are, I will say, because I do have to partake in 7-Eleven, because we are all on the run, 7-Eleven has got some better options now. Like if you absolutely have to, they have a line of like organic juices, they have like you know, 100% cold pressed, all of that stuff, if you have to. They didn't pay me for this, I'm just saying. Mario, did you have any thoughts on that? Did you want to share with us?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, she
Something's
needed her
connecting.
moment.
Definitely, it's what got me on my journey was observing everything that was happening within my community when things were shut down. And I lived downtown on the east side of downtown, and there were so many people on the streets, like it was insane. And all these fridges started popping up, and there's just this flurry of people going there and, you know, talking to the people who are running the fridges to, you know, saying how many families and children were without food. And at the same time, observing these food and pantries, people were taking the food and then discarding all that trash onto the sides of the street. So for me, it started to, spin my wheels of how can it be more regenerative? How can we help ourselves and also help the planet at the same time? And so I've always had a fond love for fruit trees, and that's been my goal, is to bring more edibles within the landscape. Instead of lawns, let's put a couple of fruit trees into the front yards, so we can have it and other people can have it too. And that tends to be a lot of the drawback, is that when you put food and have it accessible to people, people have this real interesting relationship with food about taking it and eating it. So and also a lot of misconceptions about rats and rodents, and so it's navigating this field. And at the time there were 3 fridges, and then now there is 1 fridge, pantry available for the community with no questions asked, and that was Victoria. And I reached out to her to think about creating spaces where we can have actually edible landscapes within that space. So I helped organize and plant fruit trees around to create a living oasis and a sanctuary for people to not only have access to food, but also have access to energetic space, so they can have a moment to not only have access to food, but also watch the whole process of food, where it comes from, and including these different types of edible plants. I also reached out to, in my own experience, a lot of the green people tend to have a lot of reasons why things won't work. So I reached out to a lot of just people, and they're like, why don't we have fruit trees around? Why don't we have more edibles? And they're like, I don't know, why don't we? And they have this conversation and like, let's figure something out. And I reached out to a few art collectives, like Nothing to Do LV, and to spread that message and to make it like a thing. Like let's reinforce our communities. Like let's put more love out there. Let's build more food into our landscapes, because as we've been seeing, this possibilities of food scarcity is just increasing, and we need to be better prepared as a community, but also as a state, because most of our food here is shipped in, and if we were shut down, we would have very limited amount of fresh produce available for us. So it's just been connecting with communities and artists, and just to get a whole collaborative of people on the same mission and helping each other out and networking and connecting people. So overall, it's been very just enriching experience to me. Such beautiful people, and people are making such a difference. It's it's been more than I would have any expectations for, and it's just to start.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that people are fed up. People have gotten to the point where we don't want to wait anymore for someone to determine that I'm worthy enough of a basic human need. It's not cool. It's really not cool. It makes me think about also our culture, right? Regardless of how you feel about it, every single one of us in here, I won't assume, but we are Americans, and American culture is inherently extractive. American culture does not think about how do we put back, how do we restore, how do we regenerate or revitalize. That's not a part of it, So even when we have people who are in grocery stores, I see so many people who buy way more than they need because it's available, because it's right here. We're not thinking about fair share, which is a principle in permaculture of I'm going to take what I need and then I'm going to leave the rest for someone else. So the concept of putting out fruit trees, where I could have a fruit tree in my yard, I'm not going to eat 80 oranges. Well, oranges don't do great here unless you do it in containers. I'm not going to eat 80 figs, right? I can take a couple for today and a couple for tomorrow, but you will have people that have such a resistance to taking free food, and it's very interesting. It's definitely, I feel like, the mental impact of what today's conversation is, food insecurity, just food injustice in general. Earlier in our conversation, our guy at the end, Jacob there, dropping bars, mentioned food deserts. And my question here is, what comes to mind, and do you think it can be used to describe all of Southern Nevada? But that, again, was before someone had educated me, right? So the term food desert, I was in a conversation with some of my native indigenous peeps, right? And the term food desert fails to acknowledge that people have survived and lived in this desert for years, for decades, for generations.
Bluetooth connected.
What is a more appropriate term, which has been said and I've used before, but I really do feel like collectively we should at least consciously start to make the shift, is food apartheid. So for those of you who do not know what an apartheid is the segregation, a policy or system of segregation based on discrimination. That discrimination can be racial, it can be financial, it can be a lot of different things. But we have to acknowledge that the discussion we're having mostly affects, as our amazing panelists have mentioned, Black, brown, definitely Native and indigenous, women, single parents, and our elderly. There's a whole group that is excluded from that is not tripping at all. So when we understand that our system, our patriarchal system, was designed for certain individuals to win, we have to acknowledge that it also applies to our food system, right? So I will run that question one more time. When you hear the word, switching it, food apartheid, what comes to mind? And do you, in your personal opinion, feel like that's an adequate definition or an adequate description of all of Southern Nevada? I'm going to start off with Jacob. We're going to switch it up, y'all.
So I think this can go back to one of the points I made earlier, that disconnect and that purposeful disconnect of fellow human beings from those who do have food and are privileged to have food and get such benefits and not have such like struggles in their lives that are making it difficult to get food or the ability to provide food for themselves, their family, get money, all that. And then those who, are purposely left behind with just figure it out, do what you can. And sometimes and often that does not always work. And I would say that can apply to all of Southern Nevada, again, off the point where we are largely reliant on a lot of imports coming from the rest of the country. And again, that geographical point, should any issue come up, should the system be shook like with COVID-19, that will all stop. We will be left behind as a city, except for our most basic of stores, unless we are able to store up what we can. Otherwise, trucks will be going elsewhere, or trucks will be bypassing, trucks will be held up. And just sort of that disconnect that is seemingly unmendable.
Right, and part of the reason why I felt like it was important to bring this up is because, and also important to start with you, is because you mentioned where you live now and where your area is now, and that is extremely intentional, and you acknowledge that. The reason why there isn't access, the reason why you don't have a grocery store is because there hasn't been, no one has deemed value there yet. There's not enough people, which I can understand, but people always come. This is Vegas, you know what I mean? We're busting out at the seams. So to limit that to something that ultimately comes down to a business decision is affecting so many people, so many individuals, you know? We talk about affordability and also acknowledge that access, having it. So there are people who live in affluent neighborhoods who are technically food insecure because they don't have that access to food. They have to go miles and miles, and yes, they live in the hills, and that's their own problem. But just thinking about it and taking that geographical aspect of it into consideration when we talk about using a word such as apartheid, because we're talking about the very intentional, systematic, almost redlining of certain neighborhoods and certain communities because of, you know, I'm not a mind reader, but we know how this game works, and when people are considered valuable, I was able to see, I was able to attend an Obama Fellowship brunch, and one of the speakers, her name was Colette, was amazing, and she brought up this amazing point that if it was valuable and it was safe, they would put it in white neighborhoods. Let that marinate. When we think about where we put freeways, when we think about where we put mining structure, with the land that we're taking from our indigenous communities for something that they don't know, you know, we don't know how this is going to affect these people years after. Black and brown kids have higher rates of asthma and lung issues because their neighborhoods are located next to freeways. This is where they build them. So these are things that having this conversation about food insecurity and access that I feel like is extremely important, because it's not a desert. We can survive in this desert, BT dubs, you guys. I've been growing food out here for years. Stuff grows here. Stuff grows here. Mario's also a master gardener. You know that too. Stuff grows here, guys. But Mario, you'd like to chime in?
I agree with the term food desert. I believe it's an outsider term. You know, I don't think these communities would think of themselves as deserts. And then you think of a desert is an essential piece for an ecosystem, you know, created by nature. These food apartheids are not created by nature. These are created by man, and it's systemic, and it's not right, you know, and it needs to make people feel uncomfortable, but not feel shame in it. Just acknowledge it that, yes, this is happening. Like, they do have food, you know, these communities do have food. They have processed food, they have junk food, and they have fast food, you know, but they don't have access to fresh food. And these are, very beautiful communities, beautiful people with the potential to, have a resilient, environment, which everyone should have, like David was saying, like food is a right, and also fresh water is a right as well. Those two things are right. And definitely that term, heard that as well, was coined by Karen Washington, from the Urban Farm in the South Bronx. And I think that, you got to look at the economics, you got to look at the race, you got to look at the geographic of the whole thing, because it's not just, if you put a food market in there, that's going to solve all the problems. It's an overall system type of thing that needs to be, changed and revitalized.
Yeah, our solutions, because I'm a solutions-based girl, we're not going to make it so that we're all sad and worrying about the problems. They're there. But we came here to talk about solutions, right? And I believe that our solutions and whatever change we want to make, they have to be restorative and they have to be holistic. You can't just tackle one part of it. Unfortunately, it would make our job so much easier if we could just focus on the one part, but we can't. Especially food. Food is at the intersection of all things. Food has, Anthony Bourdain said, the kitchen table is the great leveler. And I've always believed that. That is a place where I don't care what you believe, I don't care who you love, I don't care where you work at. We got some tamales on the table. We're about to smash these, right? We're about to dig in, we're about to eat some good food. We got some Calbee ribs over here. We got, you know what I mean? When you have good food on the table, barriers fall. I've seen it happen in real time. It was with my family. But, but it's something that's true. It's something that's real. And it's because it's a universal commonality. We all have to eat. And being able to share food with another individual, for me, has always been like one of my most profound ways of sharing love. I love cooking for people. I love making decadent meals. I done made Tameka some oxtail. Y'all, I put my foot up in the oxtail. They were so good. I marinated them for like 3 days. I'm not gonna tell you all my secrets. I'm just saying, to be able to come and do something and pour my love into something and do it craftfully and do it wonderfully, and then to have her tell me and call me she just called me and was like, girl, and I knew it was a wrap.
Why you
I knew
telling
that
my,
she liked it.
Don't be telling my business.
Yes, it was awesome. It was awesome. I'm also gonna say that she didn't share with her kids, y'all.
They aight.
But it's those things that bring us together, and I feel like the great big lie that we've all been told is that we are more different than we are alike. That's not the case. And when we focus on the things that we do have in common, we all love good food. We all love good music. We all love good art. We love things that make us feel internally in our spirit, And when we build off of those things, I feel like the impact just compounds on itself.
It is. It's important to break bread with one another. It's important to break bread and have those conversations and talk about solutions, coming together and collaborating. So, food does that.
Yes, it definitely does. I do want to ask you guys, Victoria, did you want to chime in on that at all?
What you're currently talking about?
Yes.
I will just say that, like food connects us, especially when we are sharing a meal. It's just thinking about how important it is for building in your own personal family. Like, people are on the go, people are working, children, are on the games, and to share a meal, that's the greatest connector, aside from going out and growing things with your family. Sharing that meal and the fruits of your labor is so powerful. So I agree with that, most definitely.
One of the things I think is very interesting, and Mario touched on this, we have a fantastic panel, right? They got me all on my soapbox over here. one thing that I feel like is interesting is the misconception that stuff does not grow here. Stuff grows here. And one of the things that I always like to tell people, because they'll be like, oh, it's too hot. It's too hot. And I'm like, you know how many things love it hot? There's things, the great thing I would say about growing food in Southern Nevada is that I, as a cultivator, can grow 12 months out of the year. A lot of other places cannot say that. I can grow cover crops like eggplants and okra, which I grow fantastically, watermelons, any kind of melons. These things love heat. You know what I mean? So there's things that you can grow, and then not only do they love heat, but they provide enough shade so that you can grow other things underneath them, right? So we just have to be strategic, but that's everywhere. People that live in places where it snows, they have to start their seeds indoors. So the misconception that you can't grow things is something that I personally would like to kind of undo. But I like to ask our panel, what do you think makes Southern Nevada more susceptible to food insecurity? And I'm going to start off with Victoria.
I would say with the rising temperatures, fastest growing city, water shortages, us being a service industry town, us also getting imports in instead of buying and producing locally. And then, of course, I would say that impacts us and makes us more susceptible to food insecurity. You know, we have people that are relying on gigs, and it's tough. You know, we got high rent and, like I said, daycare expenses. I feel like all of that plays a factor into us experiencing those issues.
Mario, what are your thoughts on it? What do you think makes, I mean, you know, I gave my 2 cents, and as a cultivator, that's one of my biggest things. But you yourself, you grow here as well. Mm-hmm. And I'm interested to know, what do you think makes Southern Nevada more susceptible to food insecurity?
Oh, definitely it's accessibility to green spaces. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily food, but green spaces. And like Cheyenne was saying, you can grow food here, and you can do it very water smart and water conscious, and grow abundance, as well as using a lot of different types of indigenous and like native plants that were used by our foraging cultures, and used as a supplement or as food as well. But definitely accessibility for me, that's the biggest thing. And also, a lot of these communities that are facing these insecurities also have the effects of the urban heat island. They don't have tree equity, so they don't have these green spaces. If you look at these spaces that are the communities that are suffering the most, they have a lack of green spaces. So I feel that that's also a big key to it. And just as we're growing and expanding the city, as well as work. They don't have if you can't work and you can't bring an income, then how can you afford to pay for food, especially nutritious food, which is at a higher premium than processed food, which doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't have to be right. I always wondered why. Like, if it takes less effort for us to produce the good food, right, why is it more expensive? You know what I mean? It's something to think about. It's something to put in your pocket and take with you for later.
I think because food has become a means of profit, so we're making money off of making food.
Yes.
You make all these packages, and it goes with the commercials on it, and then it goes to these companies that are putting all these chemicals and additives into the food. If you look at a comparison of like the processed, like the junk food in the UK and the United States, it's like, it'll blow your mind. It's like how much more these oils and these red dyes are used in our foods that are actually affecting our concentration levels, are affecting our health levels.
Right.
It's for profit, and I think that in order for us, we have to move into helping each other out and shift away from that type of money.
Yeah, because there are a lot of things that we have in mass production that are banned in a lot of other countries, like every other country pretty much. And they are the corner cutting ingredients, the cheaper type of ingredients that have been, and like, for example, red dye 40 been proven to cause cancer. So when we think about the generations, right? In our grandparents' generation, we did not have the same rates as childhood cancer as we have now. Yes, there are factors that fall in line, environmental factors and everything like that, but our bodies work a lot like plants. And yes, you can supplement things and you can take vitamins, but the things that your body needs in order to function, it gets from your diet, primarily. So if you're putting things in your body that are essentially classified as poison in other places, that is what's going to manifest in your body. But let me open it up to my ladies. What do you guys think? How do you feel about it?
What was my question again?
What was our question, y'all?
Yeah,
We got
it's,
so many. I'm on a roll, like we're going on tangents.
I
We're
know,
having a
because
good
I was
time.
just like,
We're
why are
having
we
fun.
susceptible to food insecurity?
Yes, what makes Southern
yeah.
Nevada more susceptible?
And even just, and I'm not saying that it's a myth, I know that the water levels are declining in Lake Mead, but even just the pushback, a little pushback that we received, even when we were trying to build our urban farm, in the historic West Side, but there's golf courses that are using water, There's
Man-made lakes.
Yeah, man-made lakes. They got these waterfalls outside of their housing developments, and we can't use water to grow food for our communities. This is wild and insane to me. Like, no. And so we couldn't take no for an answer, and you just keep advocating for those things. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, one of the things I specifically did, I got to work with a good friend. Her name is Lisa. She works with Nevada Plants. She is, we all love Lisa. She is amazing. And we were working on, she did a presentation for the Master Gardeners and brought up a lot of really interesting facts. And it made me very curious. And it's not like I can't test it in real time. So being that I have lived in different neighborhoods, I went to 4 different high schools out here, so I bounced around a lot. Being that I lived in so many different neighborhoods, I decided to test that theory. Like Tameka mentioned, we received a lot of pushback when wanting to start an urban farm, a production farm, in the most food insecure neighborhood in Clark County. Pushback, y'all, crazy. And water. We don't have enough water. Like Mario mentioned, there's ways to do this smart. If you compost, which reduces food waste, and you put it in your soil, it actually helps you maintain the water. You can mulch. There's so many things that we can do to be smart about how we use water, right? But I took it upon myself to go to one of my old neighborhoods. I used to live off of Fort Apache and Twain, and I wanted to just drive straight down. And the difference that you see in the trees, on the sidewalks, all those trees have to have irrigation. Guess what comes out of irrigation? Water. It's water, guys. So we have all of these trees that are not native, right? Not desert adaptive trees, which ultimately means you're going to have problems. You're going to have issues. You're going to have pests. They require way more water because they don't belong here. They're not adapted to this landscape, right? You have them running all the way down, just all the way down until you get to about Jones, depending on which street you're on. When you're on Lake Mead, as soon as you hit Buffalo, that stuff stops. No more trees. But up until that point, nothing but trees. And I got out of my car and I'm looking and I could see the irrigation lines. They got all these crazy little shrubs out here, and I'm like, the audacity. You know what I mean? We have, again, man-made lakes in certain communities. We have, like Tameka said, waterfalls, golf courses. Like, we are in such a, I don't want to say a dire state, right? Because we don't want to perpetuate fear, but we got to be realistic, you know? And when you grow and you grow in a certain, and you grow organically and you grow naturally and you grow within the system of nature, right? You actually do more to retain water than you do wasting it, you know, by having all of this random irrigation that, mind you, are on trees that aren't in people's yards. They line the sidewalks, which means that when there's something broken, we've all seen that walking down the street. There's an irrigation line broken, there's water spraying all up in the air or down into the street, water that could very well be used to grow something for someone else. So it's definitely very interesting. It's a tad bit frustrating, but you know, we're all here to fight the good fight. You know, we're not here to focus on the problems. We are solution-based.
It's the solutions. May
Right.
I? You know, even just the pushback that, you know, the city of Las Vegas they're starting a vertical farm a block away from where we are. And it's like, okay, and like, can we not have an urban farm and a vertical farm around the corner from each other? When you go to other neighborhoods and you have a Whole Foods there, a Trader Joe's there, a Smith's there, and, you know, and a Sprouts there. But we can't grow food in this neighborhood at two different locations. Like, it's not like it's going to be an overabundance. I'm just saying, like, it's, you know, it's like so even when these projects do happen, we have to make sure that we support them. You know, we have to support them. We have to make sure that they are sustainable, and you know, and collaborations are important. Like, I want to see you win. It's not a competition. We collaborating, right? And so when I have, you're gonna have, you know, and that's just the mindset that we have to have. You know, it's enough. It's enough for all of us when it comes to different grant funding and sources. It's like we share. Like
Yes. Share, y'all.
we are going to share because we don't want to be the only ones doing this. Like we want gardens and farms in various neighborhoods around Southern Nevada because guess what? We deserve it.
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna add some notes. I'm gonna try to behave myself for a little bit, because again, that's very personal. The urban farm that Obodo, our organization, is building, I've been working on for 2 years. When I tell you guys the conversations that I've had with y'all's city's representatives, the conversations that I've had with people who are meant to represent the people, yeah, it is disheartening to hear. You know, it definitely was eye-opening, and it's part of the reason why we advocate so hard, and we advocate so hard for each other, and we push each other's projects, because we know that it takes so much effort. It takes so much to be able to build. What Victoria has done, if you have not been to the Solidarity Fridge, you need to go. What she has done has been absolutely incredible. You know, she did this in front of her home.
Yes.
Like, yes, so essentially opening up her home to whoever, no questions asked. And when she needs food, people come from the community to fill that refrigerator. It's incredibly powerful, and if you haven't gone, please go. I do want, Victoria, you wanted to add in on that a little bit?
Yeah, so many things, but
I know, levels. I know, girl. I'm like, it got me literally hot. I was like,
I know, yes, we don't want to focus on just the problems, but I do feel like it's very important for us to be aware of the problems so that we know how to do better. Because, you know, when we know better, we do better.
Yes.
And just like we were talking about Whole Foods, Trader Joe's, like East Las Vegas, Historic West Side, like
We got nothing.
nothing. We have bars.
We have food
yes, we
swamps. We have food swamps.
Yes, food
You
swamps.
have access to all of the fast food you want. You know,
Not only
there are
that,
whole cardiac corners. Like
Yes.
with,
Yes.
I'm just saying, like.
And when we do have our grocery stores, they're not the same as in affluent. Yes, they're not the same as the grocery stores. The options are not the same. You know, we're dealing with obesity, diabetes. Our children are more susceptible to being pre-diabetic now. You know, when we're not, it's not necessarily our fault because this is what the options that we're given. But I believe in the green spaces. This is a way to reverse some of the issues that we have. So I wholeheartedly believe in us learning and growing and cultivating and creating, reimagining and cultivating our own systems and not being relying on these.
Right. One of the things I'm very passionate about, and I will do, I'm speaking it into existence. Throughout Southern Nevada, I'm not sure if anyone is familiar with the concept of victory gardens, but victory gardens, you know, George Washington Carver, it was a way to sustain the American people because the majority of the food that we were producing at the time was going to the war. So this was around World War II. That's hard for me to say sometimes. And so he really started to encourage people to grow. And how that would work is that your neighbor would probably grow tomatoes and, you know, basil, and then you would grow corn and, you know, those are separate growing cycles, but whatever. And then you guys would share collaboratively. So within a 4-house community, you have literally everything that you would need to survive, right? What a wonderful concept. You know, and I believe enough in people and the individuals in this room and the individuals watching at home. No small step in the right direction is ever small. We can all do this. We can all be conscious. We can all be aware. We can all plant seeds. We can all grow some wildflowers on the ground. We can all be a part of this collaborative change, you know, and I want to encourage people that these individuals are amazing. They're basically Justice League, right? These individuals are amazing. So was our Malcolm X and our you know, Cesar Chavez, but they were people. They were people. I think sometimes we tend to forget that they were humans. They were people. The things that they created, great, big, you know, generation inspiring, came from individuals much like how we are today. We are the same. We all have that capacity to create great change. And I believe that for us holistically, wholeheartedly, with every piece of me. And so I'm excited for green spaces. I'm excited for edible landscapes. I'm excited for the revitalization, you know. I do want to move on to the next question really quickly because I'm interested.
Can I add one more thing?
You can do whatever your heart desires, girl.
Mario mentioned the story of how, you know, he had reached out when I was doing the pantry. And I just want to share with everyone that because I had, you know, his support and other community members' support about starting a community garden, that really prompted me to actually just give it a go. So my biggest advice to everyone is always just start. You know, it's not about having a green thumb because you're going to kill things, and that's okay. Appreciate the cycle of life. But where was I going with this? I wanted to acknowledge that having that support and growing collectively is where we need to move towards.
Yeah, definitely. And for those who are concerned, master gardeners have a saying that you don't know how to properly grow something until you've killed it at least 3 times. So, you know, keep on keeping on, you guys. I really want to know, to my panel, we're talking about food insecurity, we're talking about access, we're talking about affordability. How do you all define food sovereignty? What does food sovereignty look like to you? I think I want to start off with Ms. Henry, please.
Oh.
I know, right?
Well, no, just
I got good questions, y'all.
You do. I mean, even when I just think about, just here locally, like how people say that things don't grow here, and we know that they do, and even just reclaiming, farming, and even within our cultures, like learning how to grow our own food, learning how to produce our own food, teaching multi-generations, how to do it. And that's food sovereignty to me. Like, we have to reclaim that, like, we can do this. We don't have to rely on the government or anyone else to do this. But once we do it, we have to share how it's done. Right. We have to come together and do it, and we must share amongst each other. So, just going back to our roots, growing the things that are culturally important to us, and sharing it with the generations that's coming up behind us.
I do want to go ahead and give you guys a definition just for those who may not know. Food sovereignty is a system in which the people who produce, distribute, and consume food also control the mechanisms and policies of food production and distribution. So if you don't know how to grow food, you don't have a green thumb, that's perfectly fine. Part of being able or creating a food sovereign system is we need distributors. We need people who know, legal stuff. We need real estate. There's a lot of aspects of it that helps give the people the control of the system so that we don't have these huge disparities happening within our communities, right? So let me see, can I pick on now? We're gonna go with Mario, because that beard is popping out. I told him when he got out of his car.
Let's see, food sovereignty, like Tameka was saying, is having the communal voice of what foods are going to be introduced into the community, what's going to be provided to the community. Culture specific, or even farmers. What kind of food do you want to farm within the community? And I know that the term it comes from indigenous people who were fighting for land access and land rights and the right to grow their own food. So for me, also sovereignty has, like what Cheyenne's been talking, like a holistic approach of respecting like indigenous ways and practices, and bringing up that whole system as we are nature, and it's not like our land, but we are stewards of this land for a time, and we're giving respect to those people that were there before us that were stewards of the land.
Yeah, definitely. I've always considered myself that. I'm just a steward. People say, oh, this is cool, and you're doing this, and that's awesome. I'm like, the plants do everything. I just come here and I sing to them, and I tell this is where my therapy goes down. So I'm just stewarding an already perfect process is how I like to refer to it. Victoria, how do you feel?
I feel it's freedom. It's freedom from agricultural regimes and corporations that value making a profit over our people and our well-being. And it's us connecting culturally and spiritually with our foods. You had talked about with your grandma, like smelling them, tasting them. We've lost that connection, and it's our right to reconnect and reclaim our seeds, because that was used as a tool to control our people. And
Bluetooth is connecting.
I think also knowing where your food comes from, right? Who's growing it? Did they use pesticides? Right now you go to the grocery store and it's like mindless. No, it's intentional. It's feeding your mind, your body, your spirit. It's reconnecting with that. And sovereignty is our liberation.
Yes, I love that. You gotta put that on the shirt. Legit. Jacob, I'm curious, especially from the public health standpoint, what does food sovereignty look like to you?
To me, if I could sum it up in one word, autopoiesis, literally meaning self-making. You are, on an individual standpoint or on a communal standpoint, again, taking what has been provided for you, what you may not know about from the government or from external systems, from external providers, from these companies, and you are taking hold of that and understanding how it works and how to make it for yourself and provide it for yourself, and tying that together in a sustainable manner, again, being the stewards of the land, and not just pillagers or extractors, being able to sort of break down the larger system and bring it down to a more human level, take it down from a less sanitized system to a more human level, where everyone understands the trials and tribulations of it, of killing something 3 times before you can understand how to grow it, and
Yeah.
just going through that struggle, but so long as it doesn't matter how slow you're moving, just so long as you're moving. Again, another spin on what you were saying in the last question. Yeah, just creating a different way of how that system will work on a more lower level.
It's
What
like
was-
the core component of combating food insecurity, right?
Yeah, it has to happen at that point first, and then grow up.
Can I just say one more thing? Like, also seeing ourselves as a source and co-creators in our lives, right? Taking that ownership and stewardship and co-creating with nature.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal.
One of the interesting things that I find, I've been kind of delving into permaculture, and something that's very interesting, we had this whole kind of observation, like 30-minute kind of thing, talking, just looking at the land and stuff like that. And one thing that I found, it was like kind of like, let whatever comes to you come to you. And one thing that I realized was that nature is incredibly resilient because it does what it's supposed to do. It only ever strives to do what it was put here to do, what it was meant to do. And because of that, it will always strive. So yeah, you have situations where people build neighborhoods over, lands, and what is nature doing? Nature is still popping up. Nature is still a part of it. And we keep trying to build as if we're not a part of nature. We are within this system. And once we start to acknowledge it, I feel like we'll get farther along, you know what I mean, collectively together. I do want to hear that Scrabble word one more time though, Jacob. What was it?
Autopoiesis.
Autopoiesis. We're going to talk about that later. Because that's going to give me the big win, you guys. I got just a few more questions for you guys. This has been a fantastic conversation. I really am curious to know, what do you guys feel like is necessary to maintain the momentum that we have going? What do you think is vital to be able to continue to grow this movement? I heard once, one of my favorite proverbs is an African proverb. It says, if you want to go somewhere fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And when I was writing these questions and kind of prepping for today, it never occurred to me that could also mean generationally. I don't have to be the one to finish it, but I can be the one to start it, So as far as maintaining the momentum, we have lots of community gardens popping up. Green Our Planet has done a great job of putting gardens in almost every school. What do you guys feel like is necessary to maintain that momentum? Who am I going to? Oh, Jacob. Jacob volunteered. What do you got?
I think one word, communication.
Okay.
Again, going with what you were saying, how would the generations ahead of us, learn about what we've been doing and what we've been, the problems we've faced and the solutions we've come up with? We need to communicate that to them. We need to be transparent. and continue to identify these problems where they pop up and the solutions. We need to pull from like the general consensus and all the different viewpoints, all the different perspectives, all the different backgrounds and ideas, because that's a treasure trove. It's not one person who can build a society or a civilization. It's a collective. And we need that teamwork, and we need that transparency of information.
I also think that it's important in collaboration for people to understand that when you collaborate, there are times where you lead and there's times where you follow. And you have to be able to respect that there are other individuals who may have some expertise, and though you're in the room and you're welcome and we love to have you all the time, sometimes it's better to have that other person kind of take the lead. It does not mean that what you're bringing to the table isn't valuable, I think a lot of times some people will sink the ship because they can't be the captain. Ooh. And that can't always, I know y'all bars, y'all don't get it all day. Come on now, don't play no games with me. Y'all see this purple hair. But it's really important that we kind of get out of what I feel like, again, is part of that extractive mindset, or that very like me kind of mindset. But
it's not about me, it's about we.
Yeah.
It is us. Collaboration is so important. Sharing with one another, supporting with one another, supporting each other. I love that you said communication. We have to also remember that everyone is not on social media. And we need to sometimes it takes getting out, going door to door,
right,
and knocking and talking and reconnecting with our neighbors and letting them know what it is we're doing, right? I mean, other people, they canvas for everything else. Like they canvas when it's political, when it's religious. We can do that around food as well. Like we have to, because we have to build, we have to continue to build our base, but we also have to make sure that we are bringing up our younger generations, because they need to know. We can't do this work and not share it with others. We can't do this work and not build the next leaders and the next advocates, because when we leave, it will leave with us.
Right.
And then what were we doing all this work for? Right. What were we sitting in all these meetings for and building beds for what?
Yeah.
So
I think
you have to
understand too, when you're doing any sort of social justice work or just anything, and mindful, it doesn't have to be on this scale, right? We can all make a change. But to acknowledge the fact that you might not see the end result. Are you okay with that? I'm okay with it. I'm okay with putting in the work to lay the foundation for someone to come in and be like, hey, that little weird anime loving girl was kind of right about some stuff. I think I want to pick up where she left off. That's been kind of the great thing about our ancestors and reconnecting with our histories, because you see that a lot of the stuff that we're dealing with, a lot of the problems, they've already dealt with in one shape or form or another. They've already dealt with, and they've already, and more times often than not, they've already developed the solution. They just didn't have the means to get to it, but we do. Mario, how do you feel? What do you think is necessary to maintain this momentum?
I think having conversations like these within the community and your neighbors and just people that you see, and also supporting organizations like the Solidarity Fridge, the Obodo Collective, all these other type of grassroots organizations that are doing the work and getting out there and helping out. If you can't help out volunteering, then share it on social media. If you have some money, donate some money. If you have time, donate your time. But being part of that community that's actively creating positive change, I think it's the way to keep it running.
Yeah, definitely. We get so much farther when we go together. Victoria.
I'm thinking about something you said. Did everybody else go? I keep thinking about us just realizing our humanity, right? You had mentioned earlier that people forget that we're just regular human beings.
Yeah.
Everyone has something that they're good at or can contribute in some way or some manner. And I really am at this point where it's like, okay, these things are a lifestyle. Like, we have to form and live our lives according to how we deserve to, fulfilling, enriching, healthy lives, and we have to do that with ourselves. And in turn, you know, we can work collectively. And I just to piggyback off of what you said, I just want people to know, like, as a collective, we're strong, and to just get involved, like, in whatever way you can. If you're worried about space at your home, or you know you're not ready to come out, well, start growing for yourself. Start with herbs. You know, just start somewhere. It's pretty much what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
And
it doesn't take a lot, you know. Speaking as an organizer, and I'm going to speak for the rest of the panel. We will take you. We will take you. Come. We will. I promise you, we will find something for
show
you to do.
up. Yeah, show
I
up.
can guarantee it. You know, and we love to see new faces. We love to see familiar faces. We just want to make sure that, again, the impact that we make when we connect with one another is the thing that echoes. You know what I mean? So that's really important. My final question, one word answer, right?
Oh.
Jacob's been good at this.
Oh,
So
wow.
we're gonna start with Jacob. But my final question, and it's a fill in the blank, right? After we did this, food insecurity ceased to exist. After we did blank, food insecurity ceased to exist. Well, obviously, if you have to put like 3 words together.
Oh, can we?
It doesn't
Oh,
have to be
okay.
just
Both right.
one word.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be money, and then you just, you know, we can.
That would help.
Right, yeah, but we want something short, sweet, and to the point.
After we did,
After we did this, after we did blank, food insecurity ceased to exist.
I think at risk of repeating myself again, enact transparency. After we enacted transparency, food security ceased to exist. From there, it would probably be a snowball, again, keeping up with that momentum with the movement and just sort of bringing it to the forefront, and again, to sort of knocking down that system, knocking down that sanitization, and showing them the grotesque and ugly truth that people are dying, that people are suffering, and that they have the power, like everyone has the power, to become like representatives for themselves, their families, their communities, or for the state and the nation, that they have the power to take that in their hands and do something about it, to do something for themselves or for others, or to do something for themselves, or at the very least communicate that to others, and then they can possibly copy that or improve off of it. It's all connected, just as the problems are connected, where it's food insecurity resulting in the crime or economic instability, in extreme cases, wars. So are the solutions. The solutions are also interconnected. From one person to another, from a community, a school, from a child's mind, all the way through their lives as they're talking to their children, and then just throughout the timeline. From our earliest points as hunter-gatherers to now, that is a culmination of thousands of lifetimes of planning and potential. And I would sum up human beings as one word, potential, and they just need to unlock it.
Yeah, you make some extremely valid points, and something else that I had learned recently, or something not necessarily that I learned, but something that I didn't really put into perspective until recently, is that we have lived within our natural system for far longer than we've lived outside of it. And it's not something that is unattainable for us. You know, this is the basis of our being started off with us being contributing and being stewards to the land that we inhabited on. You know, it doesn't take, it is what is inherently natural to us. We've just been pushed away from it. But I want to, who am I going to pick? Let's just run down our panel. Victoria, after we did blank, food insecurities ceased to exist.
I think we need to be in harmony with the land and reconnect. As Jacob had mentioned, the interconnectedness of everything from food waste. You know, there's 40% of our produce ends up in a landfill, and there's people hungry. So cultivating, getting your hands in the soil, reconnecting with mother, right? Reconnecting with our food, and not only, but with ourselves, and knowing who we are, and everything our ancestors did, and what they wanted us to carry on. So the seeds we're planting, you know, we may not see them, but they're going to help the future generation. So again, I think it ties back to us respecting Earth and then each other, and it all falls into place. Like not exploiting it, not taking advantage, not seeking, you know, greed, but caring for each other and living in harmony with everything else.
Yes, that was beautifully said, and I'm in total agreement.
Thank you.
Yes, good luck with Victoria. Mario, what is your answer after we did this? Food insecurity ceased to exist.
I think it always starts with you, yourself, and for my process to this, it's been, you know, self-observation. You know, what are my thoughts? What are my fears? You know, what are my traumas? And going to the next thing, which would be self-healing. You know, healing my systems and healing my traumas and my internal flow. And then the third thing would be self-love. You know, not with shame, but with love, because I feel that the only way we can shift into something completely new instead of following the normal and the new normal is by the frequency of love. And yeah, self-love, and that will reflect out to our external reality, because you know, it's easy to go out and, you know, put yourself into these other spaces. It's more challenging to go within, you know, and to go into like your shadows and you know observe, you know, like how am I relating? How do I engage with life? You know, what's this is all about? And I think this is how you like heal, you know, generational trauma, and this is also how you shift from like colonization energy, you know, because you can't change that with the same energy that created it. You know, we have to change that by going through a different frequency, and from there growing something that's, you know, abundant and regenerative, like a new earth, you know, like reimagine,
like
recreate it, like an Eden, you know, like where we're all in harmony and we're all in this, you know, we all have this space where we've come here for, you know, a divine reason, you know, and finding what our passions and our, you know, what we're here to do, and then we just come do it like the flower that blooms, you know, and it just takes the sun in and it meditates the sun and, you know, feeds it to the rest of the environment. It's the same type of thing we are.
Beautifully said, Mario.
Right.
His book is coming out. Yeah, you guys are fantastic. Tameka, after we did this, Food insecurity cease to
Why
exist.
I have to follow him?
Right.
Right? I definitely would not.
I'm
Why
glad
we
you're
just-
first.
Why we can't just end on that beautiful note,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's
But
it.
you
But
could do,
it
you
is.
could do the whole. I'd like to piggyback on what Mario said.
I like to piggyback on, I like to piggyback on it. But for real, at the end of the day, my word is always going to be collaboration, right? So I want to collaborate with the grassroots organizations and those who are doing this work and in this work and who want to join this work. And continue to support one another after we collaborated and supported one another and took those best practices and those projects and programs that are working in other neighborhoods, and we started a community co-op with one another, and we were able to bring multi-generations together and teach them to do this work, because we're not going to be here forever, and so it lives on past us. And we reclaim farming, and we respect food, and we use food as medicine, and we break bread together, and we take all of that, and then once it works in one area and we have done it, then we replicate it in the next neighborhood, and we replicate it in the next neighborhood that needs it, and that's when.
Woo!
Yes. Look, she tried to act like she didn't have something, y'all.
Listen,
You know? And
that's
I mean,
when.
I definitely was going to share my opinion, but I think our wonderful panelists have just, they did that, y'all. They did that, you know? Thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you so much for, pouring yourselves into this conversation, being open with us, being honest with us, sharing your experiences. We are so grateful to you. Thank you so much. If we could give a round of applause to our panel.
And thank you all.
Thank you.
And of course to our fantastic audience, both here and at home watching. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I have been Cheyenne, and I am going to pass it over to David, who's going to close us out for the evening, guys. The man, the myth, the legend.
All right. First, food apartheid. That
Yes.
is fire. That's what we need to carry out from here and let people know. We want to break this food apartheid that we live in, right? So, I'm taking down notes as these wonderful people are just spilling their hearts into it. This conversation went a lot deeper than I expected. It was eye-opening and heart-wrenching at the same time. And thank you again. It was powerful, powerful. I want to introduce you guys to a couple of anti-American concepts. Communication, sharing of information, anti-American. Connecting with the land, anti-American, right? Love, starting with self, being self-reflective, healing. Love is the most powerful weapon of all. And I will tell you, growing up, I was more of a Malcolm X man versus a Martin King man. And I thought that Martin King was super soft and Malcolm X was hard and he wasn't taking anything. But I've learned as I've grown older, it is hard to fight someone when their arms are open wide. Right? So love is the most powerful weapon. That is in... I gotta breathe to that one. Collaboration.
Period.
Anti-American. It is rooted in our history to break bread together. But breaking bread together is collaborating. You know, and that's where the majority of our families started growing from, is sharing dinners and then growing from there, right? We need to get back to that. Get back to our roots, collaborate. So, thank you, you guys. You mentioned stewardship. One of you did. I think all of you mentioned stewardship. So, I don't know what any of you believe in, but if you do believe in God, and you believe that God gave us stewardship of this earth, we've done a terrible job. To be a green Samaritan is to acknowledge that and then take stewardship of this earth, to cultivate it, to love it, to get our hands on it, to communicate, to collaborate. That is what being a green Samaritan is all about. So with that, my slogan for the Green Samaritan group is Yo soy tú, which means I am you. We are in this together. It's not about me. It's about us. It's about all of us. Because we share this earth. We breathe this air. When the water runs dry, we're all going to feel that thirst. We are all in this together. So we have to collaborate, love, get our hands in the soil, and communicate to fix all these problems. And it doesn't stop or start in Washington. It starts right here in Southern Nevada with people coming together, listening, thinking, offering information so that we can take a message to our families, to our communities, and continue to grow. You mentioned victory gardens.
Yes.
I had no idea what a victory garden is, but I've been trying to recruit 7 other of my neighbors to start growing food along with me so we can share. I had no idea that was a thing. We have the answers. We have to embrace those answers, right? The only wrong action is inaction.
Right.
To do anything.
Right.
All right. So, like Cheyenne said, and this is super important because this is where I find myself is, be solution oriented. Victoria said, be mindful and aware of the problem, but focus on the solutions. That's what we need to do. We need to focus on our solutions. We have to be aware that there are problems, right? We can't ignore them. We've done that for far too long. We've ignored these problems with our climate for so long, we can't ignore them anymore, right? Here we are in September with 100-degree weather and a hurricane coming up the West Coast. Unheard of, right? So with that, yes, we be aware of the problems, but we got to be solution oriented. So I want to thank our live audience for actually coming out.
Thank
y'all. When you start walking the door, how my heart just filled up. I was panicking for a minute, but yes. And for people at home, thank you for watching Facebook Live. Oh, I did this right. We'll get it right next time. I would love to thank our sponsor, Shannon McClinton Walton, for her donation. I want to thank our most awesome Purple Princess.
Ooh,
Let's say this girl rocking. Man! If I did anything right, it was asking Cheyenne to be a moderator.
Yeah, it was.
Good job. So, also my panelists, Miss Tameka Henry, please. When me and Tameka met, we weren't on the same page.
What?
But I tell you, she got me on her page. Tameka got me on her page. One day I was coming to work, and she looked at me and said, "You all right? Your energy is off." I was like, "Girl," she was like, "Don't worry about it." From that moment on, I've been following her path. Mario, I met just a few months ago. An amazing man, Mario Gutierrez, please. and this comes to mind every time I see Mario. You give a man an apple, you feed him for an hour. You give a man an apple seed, and you make him a millionaire.
All right.
All right,
True
and now,
story.
let me tell you. I was not supposed to meet Victoria, but I did, and we vibed from the moment we met in a park at a company function. It was amazing, and I've never left your side. And the crazy part about this is, me and her have been talking and working and communicating and doing things, and at the time I was working for Green Our Planet, and I was teaching in the school, and when I teach my children, my first lesson is dirt is dead and soil is alive. And Victoria said something to her son, and he said, "Mom, dirt is dead, soil is alive." And she's like, "Wait a minute, is David your father?" I was meant to be in your life.
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Now, please give it up for Victoria, please. Jacob Gann, let me tell you, we met on Earth Day.
Yes.
In person at the largest student-ran farmers market. And I was just talking to him, and the talk quickly turned into an interview. And I was like, look, man, I'm going to be doing a panel on food insecurities. I need you to be on that panel. Jacob has so much information. If you can tell, he's a student of this, right? Mm-hmm. So he is, I won't say Harvard educated, but you are Nevada educated on this subject, which is interesting that they actually have a program to actually educate people on this subject so people can actually work to resolve it. So thank you for what you do for your education. Please give it up for Jacob. All right. So I especially want to thank the National Atomic Testing Museum for opening up your doors for us.
Yes.
I want to thank Alex, our technician, our cameraman, our director. I want to thank Joe, who's your man. Yes, Joe. It's okay, you can come in.
Whoop, whoop.
When everyone else is kicking me out the door, Joe's like, no, come on in. Fix your emails, but come on in. All right, so. So, literally, I asked for help, and I was thinking I'll get some people to help me, but what I found was a co-producer. Fasina Amanus?
Yes.
Yay.
For the last month and a half, she has kept me focused.
Yes. Yes.
She has kept me driven. She's pulled me back when I was going too far. She's edited my copy. Whenever I say I want to say blah, 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 she's like, yeah, maybe you should. Literally, she helped produce this event.
Yes.
And I can't thank you enough. So, with that, a couple things. The Veggie Buck Truck is ran by Together We Can, which I used to operate out of Vegas Ridge Community Garden. The Veggie Buck Truck is still operating, or will be operating until November. Every first Wednesday, we will be at, the Green Samaritan Group is partnering with the Veggie Buck Truck. We'll be at the Bonneville bus station from 11 to 3, and then at the Southern Nevada Health District on Decatur and Meadows from 9 to 11 on the first Thursdays of the month. This coming Saturday, I have been asked to do a presentation at the Roseman University College of Medicine's Aspire event called A Rose Grows in the Desert. And if we learned anything today, what can we do in the desert?
Grow.
We can grow, right?
Grow.
So, yes, it's going to be at the Girl Scouts of Southern Nevada, 2941 East Harris. This is a STEM program. It's free for kids, so you guys can bring your kids. If you're not kids, you're still welcome to come. Please come and see my demo on composting and modular growing. With that, I thank you all, and honestly, let's all grow together. Yes, baby!
Great job.
And thank
This
you,
was amazing.
David.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
guys.
Yes.
You run it down
All
the panel.
right.